You just asked a crazy question, man, and I had to plug up because this is such a real discussion that needs to be had, man. So you were like, man, weed is legal in Germany. Weed is legal in the United States for the most part, right? Like, so in my city, it's decriminalized, but it's legal if you have a medical card, right? But in Kenya,
Yeah.
it's illegal, right? In Kenya, it's illegal.
Yeah.
So let me take
Yeah.
you down the road of drug reform in America. In the 1900s, segregation, where America was coming out of slavery, segregation was very heavy in society. There were white societies, which typically were quite affluent, right? And then there were black societies, which had their parallel affluencies, right? But there were also other communities that were starting to grow. And they had with them their cash crops, right? Like marijuana, like the coca leaf, right? Like opium,
Yeah.
right? Like opium. So the consumers of these drugs, a lot of them were in white communities. They had the dollar to pay for it, and they would buy these things,
Mhm.
and the industry was free market, right? Because remember, this was a free market capitalistic state. But what happened is the Mexicans, for example, they had a lot of marijuana products. They were able to use these cash crops, right, to gain
Yeah.
economic status that allowed them to be able to exist in white neighborhoods. Same thing with certain Asian communities and opium, right?
Yeah.
Remember the Europeans, most of the time they brewed alcohol, but alcohol was uh prohibited during prohibition, right? But then it became legalized
Yeah.
later once the money came. And so their own substance that takes a lot of refinery and is very, very
Yeah.
abusive and addictive, right? They made it legal. However, these cash crops that weren't necessarily a problem, that were also consumed mostly by white societies, they decided those were going to be illegal, right?
Yeah.
Primarily because it gave them the economics they needed, the economic base they needed to elevate their state in society, right? And so they made those illegal, and they started punishing them at an extent that you could not they started punishing them to an extent that you just could not keep up with, right? And these things
Yeah.
were
Yeah.
called sentencing disparities. And some of the drugs over time, they would concoct certain things and create new combinations that would affect communities much worse, and then use those profits to fund wars like the Contra. That's basically the crack epidemic here, right? That happened in America. So now when you see other countries legalizing weed, right? The EU definitely did it a lot first, right? It's not
Yeah.
just because of the medicinal properties, right? It's not just because of the medicinal properties. But remember, what does Kenya want to be like? They want to be like the West. So they had no idea what or why weed was illegal or any other form of drug for that matter, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
remember, that was the cash crop of a society of farmers in, South America. Now,
Yeah.
let's look at what an equivalent of that would be for Kenya. Wouldn't it be tea or coffee?
Yeah.
Now, imagine if the white uh colonialists decided tea or coffee was going to be illegal because now the people growing it could live in Karen or Runda.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. I
that's
see.
how drug policy in America started. So then once they realized they could commercialize it, make it medical and make it recreational and tax it, now they made it legal. But they never freed any of the black people or minority people who sold it illegally, victimless nonviolent drug offenses. They never freed those guys. Yet they get paid off of it now. Now you're seeing how Wazungus work, bro. Now you're seeing how Wazungus work. This is like
Wow.
bro, this is one of the most major discussions about how to set laws is Africans got tricked into making laws that they have no idea where or how they originated. They just want to copy Western development. And so they believe that
Yeah.
copying everything is, going to lead them toward Western development. And this is the problem with
Yeah.
idealizing the West without having the contextual knowledge you need to actually understand the crazy existence that is here, bro. It's a crazy existence, bro. But yeah, man, that's a
And
great observation. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
it's something that I've seen in Kenya on the weed being illegal issue. Uh, it's illegal, yes, on paper, but how corruption, how the government is there. So when they catch you, they can profit off of your disobedience for the law by through bribes or handouts, so that they can so that can be released from going to be trial or prison. And even in some cases, you can hear maybe those guys who supply, they give something to the police so that they can turn the eye to the other side and pretend that nothing is going on, that the drugs are not being sold by those people. So yeah, it's also a way of just encouraging corruption, making it illegal. Because if it was legal, there wouldn't be a way for the government or certain people, to benefit from it being legal. It will be a free market. It will be market for everybody's. But I think it's also a way of monopolizing the drug to benefit certain people who we don't even know and see in the daylight, but they're getting richer every time.
I mean, that's an interesting observation, and I kind of have a different take on that, primarily because
Yeah,
Kenya Kenya has created this this culture of corruption where
yeah,
there is no standard ideal for um conduct, right? And that tends to occur when westernized like lifestyles clash with cultural currencies, like cultural existences. When you're trying to form fit democracy and form fit something that's American made into a African country, you're going to have
yeah,
cultural clashes. And part of that cultural clash, I think, manifests as certain levels of corruption. And I think we're
yeah,
seeing that with the different styles of leaders, right? Like the military leaders. Man, Africa was a warrior-led society before then, right? Before political leaders came, it mattered about who was strong and who was smart, right? Like this
yeah,
like you have to be strong enough to enforce rules, right? Not just smart
yeah,
enough to be elected. And that's what
yeah,
caused a certain level of cowardice within that. But a warrior's code is it's hard to corrupt a warrior. It's easy to corrupt a mercenary, right? It's hard to corrupt a
yeah,
warrior, right? But it's hard to craft a soldier to think like a warrior or a general, right? But it's
yeah,
easy to corrupt a politician. It's easy to corrupt even a policeman, right? A policeman is
yeah,
what? Think of the psychology of someone who grows up that wants to monitor uh a community. Who grows up deciding to monitor a community? Like you can do so much more with your time, right? But like
yeah,
that's a certain psychology within itself. That's a certain psychology within
yeah,
itself. Maybe some positive with hero complexes, some negative with who want to capitalize on corruption. But I those key distinct like differences in the drug reform are they're major observations